sweat their hearts to glow. Industrial souls forged in fire's embrace. Their lives entwined with skills relentless.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to the next episode of Industrial Souls. On this show, we're going to be talking to Nikki Gonzales. I'm sure you've seen her out there. She's pretty active on LinkedIn. She has really a kind of an amazing background. We were just talking before we started this show, but her background is all over the place, all the way back to Iceland. So you may know some things about her, but hopefully we'll learn new things about her as well. We're going to talk about automation, which is one of her passions, women in technology, in STEM, and we're just going to get to know her a little bit better. So hang on, because this is going to be fun, and we'll be right back. Things are about to get industrial. Hey, Nikki.
Cool intro.
Hey, glad you liked it. Got to see your face in there. I always put all my guests in the intro, and then you live on for the next 8 episodes. So
very cool.
Yeah, how you doing? Thanks for being on the show.
Good morning. Thank you. Yeah, it's Friday morning. I had Monday off, so it feels like Thursday to me, but it's almost the weekend. So I can't say I am not happy about that.
Yeah, it is. I appreciate you taking the time to join me. I know you do a lot of podcasting yourself. I know you're busy with business and family and hurricane recovery and vacation recovery and all these different things. So I definitely really appreciate you taking the time. And for people tuning in, thank you for joining us as well. I just want to remind you that if you want to make a comment, especially on LinkedIn, make a comment. We'll see those and we'll talk to you. If you have any questions, you just want to shout out or whatever, feel free to make a comment, because the more the merrier, and it always just adds some spice.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah.
And talk to each other too. Even if we're busy talking, sometimes we get in on our little, we're in the middle of something. And, I love it when people talk to each other in the comments. This is really a community type thing, right?
It is. Yeah. The whole goal is to get to know people, me to get to know you, everybody watching to get to know you. And yeah, why not? Get to know each other while you're out there.
Yeah.
Don't be strangers. Enjoy yourselves.
Business is so much better when you can work with people that you know and like.
It is. Yeah. And actually, only people who know and like each other do business together. So all business kind of really ends up boiling down to that anyways. Nobody works with people they hate.
Well, I will challenge you on that.
I mean, chooses to do business with people they hate, not coworkers.
Yeah. I have earlier on in my career been in a position where I absolutely had to do business with people that I didn't like, but that was because I wasn't in charge, right?
Yeah. Well, let me say then, nobody wants to do business with people they hate.
Exactly. There you go.
Forced to do it.
Yeah.
Okay. So normally at this show, one of the first things I do, just for people who don't know you, even though I think you're pretty well known out there in LinkedIn land, is ask for your personal story, your personal background. And you actually have you have an unfinished trilogy of posts about your personal background, which is actually really fascinating. You condensed so much stuff into those posts. But anyways, why don't you tell us a little about yourself and your background and how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, it's a bit of a long and winding road, and I guess I'll preface it with a lot of things in my life I haven't been in control of, but I've kind of found my way just not having a plan necessarily. I've never known what I wanted to be when I was growing up or when I grew up. And that's kind of still the case. And I've learned to just go with that. But yeah, I moved from Iceland to the UK and then to the US, to a suburb of Houston when I was in middle school. And I had to learn English. I knew a little bit, but I have a strange name, and it was a very different culture. And I ended up my dad's an electrical engineer. He's a controls guy, not in the industrial automation sense, but he builds microcontrollers and all kinds of stuff like that. And he came here for a job. And then that job, they wanted him to move back to Europe. And we had already bought a house and we lived here. So he ended up starting his own business. So I kind of came into the working world actually being an intern for my dad's small business, technology business. He's an engineer, but I saw him as a business person. And I really enjoyed that aspect of getting to, meet people. And even though I would call myself introverted, I certainly was when I first moved here. I was very shy. I forced myself to become more extroverted. I do like people. I love learning things. I think that's one of my biggest, thing as you learn more about yourself, right? It's the bad thing and a good thing is I'm perpetually curious. I can't stop myself from wanting to know the next thing and the next thing. And which is why I found automation to be so fascinating, because it's really, the manufacturing industry, industrial processes, the automation or lack of automation of them. There's just always something to learn, always something that you can improve and fix. But I saw myself really wanting to talk to people. So I ended up actually going to business school. I have an international business degree, which I then found is not really, there's no starter job for that. There isn't like when you go into finance or accounting, there's kind of a typical path. With international business, it's one of those things that, well, once you're an executive, those kind of things matter, but they don't really have analyst one national business.
Yeah, you need a multinational corporation CEO internship, right?
But it is very much in line with what I now know about me. If you ask me, what's your favorite color? It's rainbow. What's your favorite food? It's leftover buffet. What's your favorite, what kind of degree can you get? Well, which one has all of the things? So it was the business degree that had a little bit of everything with an international kind of flair to it. But I really still have that kind of engineering mindset, and I like to solve problems. I like to help people. And so I found my way into sales engineering, which is something I didn't even know existed, but it's really sales, but in a way where you can't just go sell a vacuum to someone and say it works, right?
Right.
Everybody has a house and a carpet, maybe, but not everybody has a process that can be fixed with a machine vision system or a certain type of sensor. So it's all about putting together the puzzle and then solving that problem. Because I thought engineering was kind of, you had to sit behind a desk and maybe not talk to lots of people. I found this area, I guess, I don't know, a career that I didn't know existed, but that was a really, really great fit for me because it allowed me to learn technical things and to continue to challenge myself on the technical side, and then being useful with that information for my customers. I'm not the salesperson, though, that's motivated by closing big deals or money or going golfing. I'm motivated by solving problems. So I did end up, after 10 years of doing sales engineering in various different technologies for factory automation, once again, kind of found myself interested in learning more, going further into the design cycle. So I went into engineering simulation, working with how do we design the products before they get manufactured so that there's less defects that we have to find down the line, which I used to do with vision systems. And then through that, I also started to see what software can do for optimizations, for helping engineers save a lot of time and not having to do hundreds of iterations of a process or build, hundreds of prototypes, but for the software to be able to do that for them. And that got me into machine learning. And I was living in the Bay Area. So I kind of went from Texas to graduating college. Kians helped me move to the Bay Area. And I just didn't even really know that, Silicon Valley, that TV show I had not seen. But I really went into the heart of startup land, right, which is Silicon Valley.
Mm-hmm.
And I was a Silicon Valley sales manager for a hardware type engineering software. And I supported Apple and Amazon when they were making the Fire phone, all these different companies making cool things that all of us use every day, our computers, the chips, the PCBs that go into them. But I had never worked for a startup. I had worked for a Japanese company, a German company, well-established companies. And that background working for my dad in that scrappy little 5-person office where everybody kind of had to pitch into everything, I really felt like that's kind of how I like to work. I have a really hard time sticking to my lane if I see that somebody around me could use my help with something that would ultimately move the ship forward that we're all trying to move forward.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had this itch to, I was working on a 5-year-old CRM that wasn't supported anymore, and we couldn't do any segmentation to send out, relevant messaging to relevant people. And here I was sitting in the middle of San Francisco with billboards screaming at me all day, Salesforce, HubSpot, Slack, all this new stuff, machine learning, data science, you can use all of this. And I just found myself going, I want it, but, corporate saying no. So
Right.
I ended up going out and working for a bunch of different startups, and found myself working full time for a data science as a service and data analytics company that was building machine learning and AI applications for supply chains in the entertainment sector, as well as many other sort of retail supply, trying to get better at predicting demand for items in physical stores so that we don't
Mhm.
make and ship stuff to somewhere that sits around forever, nobody buys. And then it either gets clearanced off or, sent back. Um, I'm I don't like waste and efficiency, and I like automation. So anytime I see these opportunities to be like, wait, why is this being done this way? That shouldn't be done that way. That's
Mhm.
not helpful. That's kind of where things pique my interest, as well as just learning new things. I find myself to be the happiest at the bottom of a steep learning curve of some kind. And so
Mhm.
once I get too good at something, I get bored. And I did that for a while, up until my water broke at a conference in Santa Clara. I was speaking at an AI conference, and I had not planned to take off time before my due date. I was, pregnant with my first child, and I didn't really know what I was, about to go through. And my daughter decided not to wait until that date. She was like, "Hey, I'm going to come out
It's
now," even though
time.
it's 7.5 weeks early. And that really threw me for a loop. I tried to, work the same way. I just realized, I was very much, I wouldn't say workaholic, but I'm just very interested in what I do. And I have a really
Mhm.
hard time letting it go at night, or, I'm not one of those people that can like clock in and clock out. I'm always thinking about it. I'm dreaming about it. I'm thinking about it in the shower. And my daughter became that, and for good reason. And she had to be. She was premature. She needed me all of the time. And so we ended up, my husband and I, we had actually renovated a 1900s triplex in Oakland, California, for the previous 5 years to that. So it worked out that we were able to, sell the house, and I left the tech world for a while to focus on my family. And we actually ended up moving to Seattle, the Seattle area, due to family being there. And I still wanted to stay on the West Coast. Beautiful. And we started a real estate business. We had a couple of Airbnbs. I really liked designing, and he does some of the construction. And after we had done that together with our own house for 5 years, we decided to give that a shot as a business. And it was something that where we could take the kids along. So my daughter would
Mhm.
go to us to these houses and things like that, and it was really wonderful. But it was also very much a lot of work. I know there's a lot of like lifestyle business information out there, like, oh, leave your grind 9 to 5 and be your own entrepreneur. And I had known enough about entrepreneurship watching my dad growing up, knowing that that's not real.
Right.
um uh, the 40-hour, the 4-hour work week and all that kind of stuff, it's not something that I see as realistic. But work
Right.
life integration is more what I was looking for, being able to spend time with my family while also focusing on things that I'm passionate about, from a learning perspective, from a work perspective. And so we spent a couple of years, just I learned everything I could about real estate investing, about the market, about loans, about all these different things. We bought a vending machine business that we grew. And it was something that we really wanted to have, that we could keep the family involved, have job opportunities for our other family members. And that actually, it was a lot of hard work for 2 years, and it paid off. And we were, we were what I would consider to be successful. And I got to relax a little bit at the beginning of 2020. But then unfortunately, COVID kind of threw a wrench into all of that. Most of our locations were shut down repeatedly for a long time. Our construction was shut down. Our Airbnb in the area, which was for large groups of people for weddings, wedding venues all shut down. So we ended up having to start over, essentially. And at that time, it just happened to be, I was, I had been in touch with obviously a lot of people from my previous career, because building relationships and keeping those connections alive is really important. Although I'd say I could have done a better job of that. But Roman, who I work for now at Quotebeam, one of my former colleagues from Festo, we had stayed in touch. He reached out and said, "Hey, this is the time we're going to take this company full time now, and we would really like you to join us." I know they had asked before, but timing was not good when I had first just had my daughter. And something about that was, it was the right timing. It was exactly when I was looking at, I had to make a change. And so I ended up, moving back to Texas. One of the things my husband and I had both said when we left that we would never come back. So
Famous last words.
yes, exactly. Never say never. And now we live back in Houston, closer to my family, because that's another thing I learned. Having a family is, not to take for granted having a support system.
Yeah.
And I basically had to start life over in a way. But being able to come back to my tech career, and now all of the kind of what I would say people thought, or I thought even, were maybe disparate experiences in my early career: sales engineering, factory automation, then design engineering, then machine learning, AI, and supply chain.
And Coke machines.
Yes. Well, that one I still haven't exactly found the thread that pulls it back into
It'll
my
come
career.
in somehow.
Other than, actually, I probably will let my kids have that as one of their first businesses. My office building has a vending machine that nobody's stocking. So I've thought about it a few times. But all of those things actually converge now in industry, because automation is employing AI, and the supply chain around automation is a huge factor in how quickly we can automate and, increase our manufacturing capability here in the US. And that's exactly what we need right now. And so now I work for a software startup out of Silicon Valley that serves the automation industry in the supply chain sector. And we use data and data science and AI and machine learning to help small to medium sized, family-owned, employee-owned, independent local distributors, help them with their back office automation and e-commerce, and changing their business, because the last few years have changed a lot of things for all of us. And it's a path that I couldn't have predicted, I couldn't have planned for in any way. But yet, right now I'm kind of in a place where all of those things tied together, and those experiences have made me valuable in a way that I didn't expect, in the types of things that I can kind of pull together, and dots that I can connect, or people. And so I have found myself finally, even though I'm not exactly, I thought self-employment was the freedom I needed. But now working with the company, where it was really, the interview that we had was not so much, let me sell you on the job and let me sell you on myself. It was, let's try to see what is the reality here, and will it be a fit, and how can we work together to make sure that it continues to be a fit. And I found myself for the first time in my career to feel completely, I don't know, at peace with what I do. I love what I do. And my kids can see it, my family can see it. So things like sacrificing, long hours, traveling a lot, in the past, that caused a lot of problems in my family. My husband would say, "Why are you doing this? This doesn't make sense. Are you even getting paid for this?" Stuff like that. And now it somehow is like everybody understands. They can see why I'm doing. They can see it makes me happy. They can see where it's a fit, and and I did a lot of things. It's just my MO, I guess. I can't stay still. I can't stay in one lane. So I have ended up starting a podcast and doing all these other things. But that's just how I am, I guess. And I've learned a lot about myself in the last few years as well. And one of those things I have learned is that's in fact like my personality type. And so that's okay. I don't have to force myself to try to be another person.
Yeah, that's awesome. Real quick, David is saying, "Hi, greetings from Vienna, Austria."
Hi, David.
Hi, David.
I've been to
Thanks for
Austria
sending in.
before, but not Vienna. I really would love to go one day.
I think it's really cool. Actually, a lot of times when you look back on your life, things line up, and when you're going forward through it, it feels like just such a chaotic mess. But
Yeah.
it's cool the way you can draw a line from where you are all the way back to your father. And it's just interesting that just his fundamental characteristics they're still at work in you, to this day in the role of what you're doing now with your life. That's cool to see. As a father, that's cool to see, but it's also just cool as a story arc to be able to, not just a random string of things, but actually goes back to a human, not
Yeah.
just a human, but actually like one of the most important humans in your life as your dad. So that's
And
cool.
he is again. So I actually, when we moved to Washington State, my the family that I went to for there, my support system was my in-laws. They were living up there, and instead of going back to Texas, I was like, great, I can stay on the West Coast and have family. Unfortunately, I lost my father-in-law during COVID. Somebody that became very close to me and my kids, and we lived together for a while. So, you know, when I was living very far away from my dad, thankfully I had that kind of second dad.
Right.
But after he passed away, we actually did come back to Houston, and I now live across the street from my dad's neighborhood, and I co-work in my dad's office space sometimes. So it has come back full circle in a way. And that was very intentional of me. If I was going to come back to my childhood, you know, part of my growing up kind of home, after I said I would never come back, it really is because of the people. It's the people that I came back to, and being able to, you know, work with him again, and him to see me in this place, and, you know, my kids, it's really worth a lot.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah, that is, you just made it even cooler. It was already cool, and then you put like icing on top and made it
Yeah.
even cooler. So
He even came
what
to
an
my
awesome.
conference. I put on a conference with Allie, so my co-host of my podcast called OT SkateCon,
I've
which
seen
happened
it.
to be right after the hurricane in July. It was very chaotic and hectic, but my dad attended. He came as an
Nice.
attendee to my conference, and
How cool is that?
yeah, it was just incredibly cool. It was incredible.
Yeah, he's got to be super proud, and it's an inspiring story too. It's just actually that's what Yusuf said. I'm echoing Yusuf's comment here. It's an inspiring and cool story, and it's a lot of technology in there, but also a lot of people in there,
Yeah.
which is a cool combo. And actually, going back to your introvert comment, because I'm an introvert, okay, I'm a pretty hardcore introvert. On the test, I score like 99 on introvert, but we get a bad rap as not liking people, which is actually not at all true. Generally, we don't like fake surfacey interactions. We actually really like people. We want authenticity and maybe one at a time, deeper, honest human connections. And that thread is like present in your story because you have that connection to your dad, but also to transition to your podcast and your conference. I mean, those are direct, then kind of like outcroppings of the human side of your combination of technology and human that's built into your life. Before we talk about that, I'm going to throw in another comment here.
Hi,
George.
Emily's dad. Emily Merritt was instrumental in making our conference OT SkaterCon happen. She's somebody that
Nice.
we met at at Automate, in fact, which is a big industrial automation conference, a robotics conference. But we had dinner, and I just got to know her on a personal level. She's not from the industry at all, but like you said, it's about those people, those genuine connections, right? You can meet
Right.
thousands of people at a trade show, but some people just kind of touch your soul, or
Yep.
you can, you know, and industrial souls. And I couldn't help but keep her in my orbit and find a way to work with her when the opportunity arose. And so she started helping with the newsletter of our show. And then I leaned on her to, you know, help us produce this conference. And her dad watched it, and he's here. So thank you,
It
George.
is.
I think you should be incredibly proud of
Hey,
Emily.
George.
She is amazing. And yeah, just having those types of people in your life, in your professional life and your personal life, that you can have that genuine connection with, it really makes such a difference. Because, you know, skills you can learn here and there, and technologies or softwares or different processes people can learn. But there's something about, you know, working with people that you can trust and that, you know, will do the right thing, having integrity. But I think that's something that us introverts, and I totally agree with you. Like, I have bowed out of many group situations where I felt like it was just the discussions and it just wasn't genuine. And
Right.
I have no energy for that. Like I just get
Right.
drained very quickly and need to go be by myself in a corner.
Totally. Totally relate to that. Yeah. So this event, OT SkaterCon, and your podcast, what is the motivation behind launching that? Is it the community or getting to know people, or was there something else, or what's your vision for it into the future?
It is about the people, but it is also about the technology. So let me back up about Automation Ladies. We started that because my co-host and really the the queen of all these ideas, although the podcast, I guess, was my idea, but we had started Ali G. She's got a really big following on LinkedIn. She's an engineer. She owns her own company now. When I first saw her on LinkedIn, she was posting a lot of technical content, YouTube videos on how a valve works. How
Right.
does, what's a PID loop? Basic things that basically to her, the reason she was sharing that on LinkedIn is because she said, when I was in college, I wish I had known these videos existed. Right. And maybe they didn't even at that time. Right. We've
Right.
come a long way in the amount of content that's available that isn't from the textbook
For
or from the
sure.
professor.
For sure.
And I just thought, wow, how refreshing. Because I had generally been one of very few women, both in my office, in my sales force, in my company, at my customer site. And so I was just not accustomed to seeing women providing technical content at all.
Right.
And I loved that. And a bunch of us got together on a little bit of a group chat on LinkedIn, and we were like, hey, let's encourage more women to make more technical content. Because it's so great to see a representation of yourself doing something, or if you something you want to learn. Of course, you can learn from everybody. You can learn from anyone, but there's something
Sure.
about seeing something that you can like strike that connection with. So we were really trying to push other engineers and women to make more technical content. We were like, oh, we'll send you a PLC if you'll make a video about it. But not everybody wants to be on camera. It's very
No.
hard, particularly if you're a perfectionist or you're a little bit, less used to being out there to even put out any content, because you will get criticized. You will get, somebody that doesn't like how you did the thing. And so it was slow going for us to try to push other women to create content. And being the types of people that we are, I found myself, Ali and I have a lot of things in common. We decided, you know what, if we can't get other people to do it, well, we should at least lead by example, right? Then let's do it. So we decided to put together a podcast. The idea from me came from the podcast called Office Ladies, which is
Mhm.
Angela and Pam from the TV show The Office. They have a podcast where they're actually best friends in real life and they talk about The Office.
Mhm.
And I have felt like I had found a friend in Ali, and we also liked to talk about automation. And I was like, I bet that there's women just like us that have only one or two other women around them, maybe in their physical, working life. And maybe they don't even connect with those women. Being told go be friends with the other woman because she's also a woman. I mean, I think we all know that that's not enough
Right.
of a connection. So we just thought if we make these conversations that we're having more public, I bet more women will find us. And maybe some of them will feel like they found a home that they didn't have before, or a connection or something. But it was never meant to be just for women. It was just, that's what we are. That's what we felt we were lacking. That's what we wanted to see more of. And so that's what we
Sure.
decided to go out and try to do. But it was always for us, like, let's do it until somebody else gets inspired to come along and do it better than us. Then we can peace out and just consume the content. But what I have found with the show, because I don't have a lot of time for producing it, and I have zero experience. We don't have a great, show structure where we're going to pull out, 3 nuggets of this or that. We just really like to have conversations with people.
Right.
And the fact that we've gotten to know so many people in the space that we feel like we have something in common with, that we have some sort of common vision that we can relate to on some level. The connections I've made on the show make it worthwhile, like 100%, and probably why I won't quit doing it at any point soon, even though I can probably get somebody else to take over, because I will miss those connections that I get to have. So the show really fills my cup because and my criteria for guests is, do I want to spend an hour talking to you on the show?
Right.
Whether it's online or offline. Like if I don't want to talk to you for an hour offline, I'm definitely not going to want to do it for an hour in public in front of other people, and nobody's going to care about that conversation.
Right.
But so it was really about showcasing the technical, but with that kind of personal thought of, hey, we found this little community of women that we found on LinkedIn. And that was, again, because of COVID, really, that we all kind of went on LinkedIn looking for professional connections,
Right.
demos. You couldn't do sales calls and demos anymore as much in person. And then OT Skatacon is, again, another thing that Allie thought of, because she's a process engineer. She's got a chemical engineering background, but she runs a automation and controls firm. And there are a lot of things that she learned that, as a degreed engineer, she felt like when she got out in the real world, she was like, holy crap, I didn't know, about safety in the electrical panel, or about what millwrights do, or all these people that I have
Right.
to actually work with, or that have to touch my designs. I should know more about them. And so she wanted to put together a curriculum over the course of a couple of days that could expose somebody to all of the different types of engineering disciplines involved in operational technology and industrial
Wow.
automation, both so that maybe you could find an area that, really strikes your interest and you want to learn more, but also the ability to have a strong network around the areas that you maybe aren't the expert in, but you're going to have to touch, or your customers are going to have to know about, or you're going to need resources for down the line. And we really wanted to bring together a conference that, again, wasn't about a certain type of person or, echelon. We had CEOs and we had college students and machinists that had never worked with a robot before, all in the same room for 2 days. And it resulted in, I would say, something pretty magical. But yeah, it was really a combination of the technology and the people that drives us to do things.
Was this conference the very first time you had the conference?
Yes.
Then?
So
Yeah.
Allie and I attended a 2-day network OT networking training from a subject matter expert that we met through LinkedIn. His name is Josh Varghese, and he has a company called Traceroute, and he does trainings at factories for their staff to understand how to, the new IT, but for OT, right? So the firewalls and networks that hook up all the PLCs and the SCADA systems. And Allie and I were both like, wow, we've never sat through a 2-day in-depth technical training that wasn't boring, that didn't want to put me to sleep, like where I actually wanted to be there. We got to network with some really great people during the lunch hours and stuff like that. And somebody organized a karaoke after hours.
Nice.
And about half of the engineers in that training ended up best friends singing with each other at the end of the night, which, if you can imagine a quiet room with 20 engineers all standing up against the wall in the corner, that's how it started. And then by the end of the night, just everybody had their turn at least once and was up on the table singing. And, the feeling that next day when you were talking about the training, having had that personal connection, it was incredible. And then the relationships that came out of it after the training, of who can you call on when you have a problem or you need additional staff for a project, all those things. It just resulted in so much more than what we thought the network training was about. And at that point, Allie said, let's do a thing like this, but with a broader focus that isn't just industrial networking, but kind of that whole scope of the OT technology. And that was really our inspiration. And thankfully, we tapped Josh to be one of our speakers, and he didn't mind us stealing his idea. But we executed that. We came up with it in February, and we had our first conference in July.
Wow.
And that's one of the reasons I say we couldn't have done it with people like without people like Emily Merritt or something, because we had no idea what we were doing. We've never put on a conference before. And it was really hard.
Yeah. A lot of work.
Yeah, it was, but it was also incredibly rewarding. And people liked it enough that about 20 to 25% of the attendees bought tickets for next year already.
Wow.
Before they left the first time.
That's great.
So,
yeah.
And we have a lot of learnings of how we can do it better. And I personally am really excited because I planned and kind of did my own wedding 10 years ago. And I was just always kind of bummed, like, man, I'm never going to I learned so many things that I could have done better. And I was like, oh, I'm not going to use this again because I don't plan on getting divorced and remarried anytime soon. Never. But this actually was one of the ways that I was able to reuse a lot of my wedding planning skills as an event host of a technical conference that really ended up being, yes, about the technology, but so much bigger part of it was the people.
Plus, it's a learning experience doing something completely new and out of the box for you, which you love.
I crave it, even though sometimes I'm like, man, life would be so much easier if I could just have a 9 to 5 and clock out and go home.
Yeah, but that's
I know I
boring.
would get bored with that really quickly.
Yeah. So here's an encouragement from Hugo, and Matthew has a question. Of course, now when they're long, they're incredibly impossible to read. Can you read that?
Yes. So I'm entrenched in OT, but more so from a cybersecurity perspective and not controls. How can the security community engage with the operational teams to help them be aware of security concerns in OT? We don't want to make controls harder, but change needs to happen to help secure OT ICS infrastructure. 100%. That is actually, so it's Cybersecurity Awareness Month. It's October.
Yeah.
We at Automation Ladies, we're not cyber experts in any way, but we have a cybersecurity panel every year to talk about this because it's one of the most important topics in our industry at the moment. Cybersecurity professionals need to learn more about OT networks and the hardware and the software that the OT
Yes,
people are using to be able to
sure.
talk to them in a way that, bridges that gap. It's not, IT and OT just have a very different way that they've grown up doing things, and the technology has evolved differently. The ways budgets are done, the way everything pretty much is different. But it is incredibly important that they start to understand each other and to be able to work together. And OT networks do need to be segregated from IT networks, but they also absolutely need to connect in the right ways. So my suggestion is to start going to, we want more events that bridge those two gaps. So cybersecurity was a big part of OT SCADACon. And we are actually coming out with training kits for cybersecurity professionals that want to get a cursory knowledge of how OT stuff works. And that's something that we plan to roll out before next conference, is to have these training kits available for sale and we actually already had somebody that came to the conference. He's in IT. He wants to transition to OT, and we provided him some hardware, some help, some kit stuff. And we are really looking at, making those conversations just less adversarial and more
Right.
helpful. And something that we found to be incredible during the conference is our cybersecurity speaker, Ashley Van Hosen. She has a lot of practical experience. And a lot of the other speakers after her presentation started asking her opinion in the middle of their presentations. Like, oh,
That's
and
cool.
is that right, Ashley? Am I getting that right from a cybersecurity standpoint, or am I saying something wrong here? And just that vulnerability to be able to say to other speakers, which,
Right.
other types of conferences, I feel like sometimes the speaker is somehow revered as somebody that is perfect and knows everything.
Magic. Yeah.
Yeah, but the speakers they have expertise in a certain area, just like everybody else. And just having that vulnerability, and I'd say that for anybody really, career-wise or technical-wise, you want to work with people that are able to use you asking questions as it's a sign of trust that you're able to ask a question or get help.
Yeah, for sure.
And, there's tons of more long-winded technical answers to that question that I can take offline, Matthew. Not that I'm any kind of expert, but that would be my quick and dirty answer to that.
Also, I just think in general, because of the environment, the world environment, let's say, and I know for Department of Defense associated companies, which lots of manufacturers are part of, like the defense industrial base, the focus on cybersecurity compliance and increasing requirements of the cybersecurity model that the government sets out, are making this more important than it has ever been for a while, and rightfully so, because there's so much kind of like catching up. I feel like some of the OT technology is kind of like you said, it's gone in one direction, sort of separate from the IT direction, but more increasingly, these things are talking, being interconnected, and creating vulnerabilities and things that need to be watched out for the sake of our own manufacturing industrial base as a country, to prevent vulnerabilities and all that.
And I know a lot of people like to talk about, there are a lot of new companies and new technology that bridges the gap in the hardware and software, more in the technology itself. But the majority of the manufacturing base here in the US anyway is old. It's got old equipment. It's got old technology. They're not going to replace it until it breaks. So we need to find a way to work with it the way that it is. And move things forward. Same thing goes for the distribution channel. We want there to be a number of independent distributors around. We don't want, just two conglomerates or Amazon controlling everything. But then we also need to equip that long tail or those smaller businesses, those smaller companies, those older, players, so to speak, with the how do we help them modernize what they're doing without having to replace everything that they have. And I think that's kind of a common thing across, whether that's the manufacturing equipment in a factory or the software stack and processes that the back office of a distributor uses, or even how we do business. Right? You can't just call on people anymore. Millennials don't answer the phone.
Yeah,
I don't even know
it's all
the Gen Zs, but
transformation.
you got to be everywhere now. You got to be in all the different channels. You got to be able to sell online. You got to still be able to take a fax. So we're in a weird time right now where like all things apply depending on who you're talking to or who you're selling to or who you're working with.
Yeah. Yeah. The pace of digital transformation is just going crazy. And then, manufacturing being sort of a little bit has been able to kind of not play that game for a while. And all of a sudden it's like, nope, literally it's touching every single part of the business. And if it hasn't, it will. But before we say anything else, I actually want to go back to, you were talking about these kits for IT people. To equip them in the world of OT. If somebody was listening to this now, which I hope somebody is, and they wanted to learn more about that or find one of those kits or whatever, where would they go to learn more about that?
That is a great question. I would say reach out to Emily Merritt. You'll see her name spelled in the comments here because her dad graciously attended.
Put a link to her in the comments in the event if you.
I'll put a link later to her LinkedIn profile. She created a wait list for us because Allie, in true Allie and Nikki fashion, we do tend to put the cart before the horse. Oftentimes, we get very excited about things, and that's also how we hold each other accountable to making our ideas real. Is putting them out in the world or having other people hold us accountable to that. We do have currently PLC training kits that are not specifically geared towards IT or cybersec professionals, but they are available for sale at Quotebeam.com, which is where my company, it's a marketplace and e-commerce platform for industrial automation. So Allie's company sells these DIY PLC kits. We send you all the hardware, but in the box, just like you would get it if you bought it from a distributor, right? And then you have to build it. And then you have to, you can run some exercises and things like that, but it gets your test bench started. We do have some of those still available, and I'll drop a link in the comments later for where you can buy those. But the kits that are really meant to introduce an IT or a cybersec professional, we are still working on those with the industry relationships and things. And so we have a wait list currently for those interested in those kits. And we'll make sure that they're fully fleshed out and ready to go before OT SCADACon next year, 2025, which is in July.
Okay. So be looking for those.
Asking about that.
Yeah.
Emily's going to hate me. She's like, more interest in things we don't have yet.
Yeah. Well, gives you something to do because, in your downtime with.
Yeah. Right.
Exactly. Hey, I appreciate you coming on the show. I really have enjoyed hearing your personal arc through technology and people and automation and tying all that, how that all ties together into just who you are and what you're doing with your life. It's been super interesting. So I just want to say thanks for being a guest and coming on the show and sharing all that. I feel like we're scratching the surface of so many things we could talk about, but that's okay because I feel like it's better to leave people wanting more than to try to talk about every possible thing. But thank you for coming on the show.
It's been welcome. Awesome. Is it okay if I give a short little pitch because I find myself
do it?
So Quotebeam is where I work, the place I found my home, the place I feel fulfilled working with my team. And we just released a few months ago our e-commerce product for distributors. And it's not just an e-commerce, like a transactional e-commerce platform. It's really the way we're building it is we want you, if you're a distributor, or in the future, even a systems integrator, and you sell some components, but really what you do is you sell systems, you sell solutions, you work with people, right? It's hard to bring that business online. And we're building an e-commerce platform that actually lets you bring that relationship type based business online. So it's not just listing your products and buying them, although that's possible. You want to be able to sell the things you have on the shelf. But you want to be able to establish those relationships and do business digitally in a way that, you can actually work with people. So complex quoting and collaboration and sharing data and all of these things that need to happen in a project lifecycle when you're buying something technical and industrial. It's hard to do that online. And that's something that we've built, something very, very specific for industrial automation distributors. It's called Sales Pilot by Quotebeam. And if you go to quotebeam.salespilot.com, it'll tell you all what that's about. But that's really what I'm working on outside of my side projects all of the time. So if that's anywhere that touches you, if you're listening to this, if you either work for a distributor or you buy from a distributor that doesn't have an online experience that's helpful to you, please check that out. That is the passion project that, my actual work though, outside of my other passion projects that I work on. And I would love for more people to know about it.
And that's Sales Pilot
Yes.
at quotebeam.com.
Salespilot.quotebeam.com.
Salespilot.quotebeam.com. Okay.
Yeah, being a website. Thank you so much.
Yep, we will put a link to that in the comments too.
That would be awesome.
Yeah. All right. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Nikki, thanks for being a guest, and we'll drop a link to the website, and we'll drop a link to Emily.
Yeah.
In the comments, and I'm sure I'll see you out there. You have a great rest of your week.
Thank you. You too. Bye, everybody. Happy Friday.
Bye.